Now it's time to set some materials for all of the objects, and this will be pretty straightforward and there won't be many materials here. The scene may look a little bit complex, but actually I want to keep the color count really low, so we'll be reusing a lot of materials. And let me show you how to keep pretty consistent palette throughout the scene. That too helps to maintain stylized look throughout the whole illustration. So yeah, let's start with something as a ground. And we'll move to the materials tab right here with this little red icon and create a new material. You should be pretty familiar with creating materials by now, so let's just click new and let's rename this, but don't call it ground, let's call it green because I want to reuse it on the leaves as well. So let's call this green, and I want to go for some pastel green color here, maybe a little bit darker. And to see that, we need to change to the look dev mode, so hold Z and go down to choose look dev, and already we can see the color we are putting there. So let's adjust that a little bit. I don't want it to be so much saturated, but yeah, something like this, and maybe a little bit darker. Okay, that looks fine. Now select the random leaf and let's select the material by clicking on this little arrow here and click green. And right away all the leaves have the right color. And if you want to color the particles, you have to assign material to the original particle object. So let's just search for it right here in the outline view. Let's select the leaf particle, and again let's just select green from the list. And yeah, that's for the green color in our scene. And right now I want to choose color for the stone structure here, for the ruins and the stairs and all that stuff. So let's create a new material and let's call that wall, or we can call that stone. And I want to go for a little bit beige color here. So just move this in the direction of orange and red, but just a little bit to give it that nice light color. Maybe a little bit darker, like this. Okay. Now we can assign this to whatever object we want, and I want this color for the stairs, obviously, and these stones, so let's assign that. And if you have too many objects in the scene, there's also another way how to assign multiple materials, or rather one material to multiple objects. So you can just select materials that don't have one yet. So basically let's select all the pillars, let's hold shift and let's click all the pillars, and right now we can click this stone right here, so we have it as an active object. You can see that yellow outline and the darker orange here, and you can press Ctrl L, and that's the command for linking the data. And right now we want to link materials to those other objects, so press materials and you have assigned the material to all of those. So that's a nice trick if you have a more complex scene and don't want to assign materials one by one. And right now I want to give materials to tiles, but I really want them to pop out a little bit, so let's select the stone material here, but I want to make it a little bit darker, so I will use duplication option right here. So here where you have a name of the material, there are a bunch of buttons there, and one of them is icon for copying, and it says add a new material. And if you click that, it'll create a duplicate of that original material and give it a number. So let's rename that to tiles maybe. And here you just click the color and don't touch the color wheel, but just drag the value here so it's a little bit darker. And I wanted to do it like this because I really want to keep the hue and the saturation of the color, and I only wanted to make it darker. And I would basically need to create a new material, then copy and paste the color information there. And this is much quicker way where you just select the existing material, make a duplicate and make it darker. And we'll use this method further. So let's select the rock, anyone you want, and let's select the tiles from here. Let's click here to create a duplicate. And now just rename to rock. And we can go even darker here while maintaining that brown hue. And one of the last things to give material to is the trunk of the palm tree. So let's click that. Now let's select rock, create a duplicate, and rename to tree. And right here you can go a lot darker. And now the only thing that remains are the glyphs and the water. So the water will be pretty straightforward. We will use the settings that we did in the last episode. So let's create a new material. Let's call this water. And I want to give it a really bright blue, even almost cyan color, but maybe not fully saturated, something like this. And let's go for the IOR settings, which I've explained before, and it's the index of refraction for the water. So let's put 1.333 there. And we want to go to almost full transmission right here. So let's go to 0.8. And that basically determines how transparent or translucent the material is. And last thing is the roughness, where we want to bring it down all the way to something like 0.05 to make it really shiny. You can already see how shiny it is. And let's just select this other water object and select the water material from the list. So that's for the water. And now the glyphs will be really easy. Let's select the glyph and create a new material. Let's call it the glyph. And we'll need to switch the shader for this material. And as I said some time before, the material is basically a container for a shader. So you can see this here as a container, and here where the surface is. And basically the container contains many outputs like the surface, volume and stuff. So by default you have a Principled BSDF shader assigned for surface, and that's basically the most flexible material right now in Blender. It follows the rules of physically based rendering, so it contains all that metallic stuff, roughness stuff and all that. Let's click here on the Principled BSDF, and here you can see a list of all the shaders you can use. For example, Diffuse BSDF controls mostly only the color of the object and counts in the Fresnel information. You don't need to worry about that right now, but what you need to do right now is search for emission shader right here, and that's a very simple shader which just emits the light of some color at some strength from the object. So we'll need to set this to orange color. So drag this down to this really saturated orange color, and let's give it a strength of 20. And you can see right away here in the look depth how the emission shader starts to shine. And let's rotate the scene, select this glyph here, and select the glyph material from the list. Okay, and as I said, this was pretty straightforward. Nothing much to do here when it comes to materials and colors. And yeah, we maintained a pretty straightforward palette if you look to the material list, and we basically created a little style guide for this scene.